Very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, before I get into my debate, I just want to point out a few brief Killarney matters. The guardrail on the West Bay Street, especially that immediately west of Gambia, that guardrail has been projecting into the road for some time now, posing a safety risk to drivers as well as pedestrians. And I had sent a communication previously warning that if it's not repaired, sooner or later we will have, if not an accident, possibly a death. And I think that should be addressed as possible. And there are several areas within the West Bay Street areas extending from Nesbitt, extending west. The road is eroding because of the tidal flow, the water, rough waves. And it's only a matter of time before the West Bay Street Road collapse. And therefore, again, I would ask the Minister of Works to treat that as a matter of urgency before we are unable to travel or traverse the Western Bay Street area. And, Mr. Deputy, one of the problems we face, especially in the West, is litter. For some reason, individuals feel like the West is the garbage bin of Providence. And I would appreciate if the Minister of Works would put up more do not litter sign throughout, not just the West, but throughout the Bahamas. Bahamians must keep our island and our country clean. But Mr. Deputy, it is good to be back in this place again near year end to offer my contribution on behalf of that great, lovely constituency of Killarney there in the West. And before discussing a number of the legislation before us, I would like to note a few very important matters. Despite the many issues in the country, the government suspended business for a whole month so they could hold their party convention and send much of their cabinet to West End and Grand Bahama over the course of several weeks. And it is clear, Mr. Deputy, that the PLP business is more important than the business of the Bahamian people. They bragged. They bragged. I'm going there Friday. They bragged that they had a big agenda after the speech from the throne. Yet they quickly went on a very long, prolonged break. The country knows, Mr. Deputy, that the PLP's main agenda is using government for their own ends. And by the way, there is a song, Bush Crack and Man Gone. The Prime Minister is out of the country again, Bush Crack. They organized a convention and a by-election campaign. But they are a failure at organizing the work of government and the work of this House. Sadly, Mr. Deputy, I must again decry the poor organization of this chamber by the New Day administration. We got the usual late notice as to what we were to debate here only a few days ago. However, what was worse this time was a back and forth changing of what bill we were to debate. In fact, I started preparing one debate only to be informed 2 days later that it's changed. I was trying my best to communicate with others to find out what bill would we be debating. It was first this one, then it was something else, only to be some other combination. And more than 2 years in office, Mr. Deputy, they can't organize the House agenda, and God knows they can't fill potholes. If they can't do this simple task of government, we know why. They are failing miserably at the bigger task. But the PLP must be given credit for at least a couple of things. They are very good at traveling. They are good at giving out contracts and favors. And the PLP are also good at making promises. Just like all those big promises they made to the people of West End and Bimini. But they are not good at delivering on promises. The reason for this poor organization is gone again, Prime Minister. And yes, Mr. Deputy, Bush crack and man gone. He's never in the Bahamas long enough to bring order to the administration, and those on the opposite side are often leaderless. But you try in Freetown. As disorder rules. I am sure that the Prime Minister and his crew will enjoy their latest luxury trip to Dubai, paid for by us, the taxpayers. But, Mr. Deputy, we are here today to debate a series of judicial reform bills. They are the Supreme Court Amendment Bill 2023, the Judges Remuneration and Pensions Amendment Bill 2023, and the Magistrates Amendment Bill 2023. The Supreme Court Amendment Bill seeks to increase the number of justices from 20 to 25. The Judges Remuneration and Pensions Amendment Bill seek to provide for a judge to retire where he or she is over 50 years and served 5 years or more as a judicial officer. The amendment also preserves the right of a judge who attains the age of 55 within 3 months of the commencement of this act to retire and receive a pension in accordance with the repealed provision by writing the Chief Justice within 3 months following the commencement of the new provision. Mr. Deputy, with respect to the pension, there are 3 branches of government: the judicial, the legislation, and the executive. Should we not treat all similarly? Should we not have a bill brought here, a proper pension bill for the legislation? We have pension, insurance, etc. for the judicial. We have similar pension, insurance, and benefits for the executive. But should we not expand and ensure that the legislative have a similar pension plan as the executive and the judicial? And, Mr. Deputy, such bill, when brought in force, I hope very soon, would be retroactive to accommodate all those living past speakers, so they too can benefit of the pension as the Chief Justice and Executive Prime Ministers. Mr. Deputy, there should also be amendment. There should also be amendment when you're talking about pension. There should also be amendment to the salary with respect to the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister holds the post of Prime Minister and is paid for that post. But he also receives a salary as a member of Parliament. The ministers receives a salary as a minister of the government. But they also receive a salary as a member of Parliament, of which they are. Should it not be similarly done for the legislation, for the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, where the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker, the part of the legislative branch, the amendment to the Act, allow them, just like the others, to receive a salary for the Speaker, but they are members of Parliament and therefore should likewise receive the salary for the Member of Parliament. So I asked the government, I failed. I did not do the correction. But I have a little hope in you. Do it. You have my vote. You have my vote. It is done. It is done. It is done in countries like the United Kingdom. It's done in Australia. And even if you refer to Erskine Mayes, it's recommended. So let's deal with that as a matter of urgency. And Mr. Deputy, I know you can't vote, but you agree. The Magistrates Amendment Bill divests the Chief Magistrate of ensuring the performance of administrative matters affecting the magistrate courts under Section 16(4)(c) of the Act. And it empowers all administrators appointed under Section 4 of the Act to assist the Chief Executive Officer appointed by the Council pursuant to the Court Services Act 2003 to perform such administrative functions necessary for the due discharge by the Chief Justice and other magistrates of their functions under the Act, or as the Chief Executive Officer may direct. Mr. Deputy, I support adding more justices to the Supreme Court, but I hope the government would also note that also calls for improvement in infrastructure and staff complement and support staff for such justices. Because increasing the number without making the adjustment to the staff and whatever is necessary for the functionality of such individuals would not be able to function properly, Mr. Deputy. So such adjustments must be made. If not, then we can have an increase in justices receiving salaries but not sufficient work or not any work to do because there are no support staff. I also support the other amendments which seek to improve the administration of the Magistrates' Court and to improve the pension system for judges. I have spoken in here many times about the need for this administration to address the problem of crime in our country. I got 12 minutes, that's all? That's not right. Oh. You would just kind of shift my speech in turbo. But I could go back. I could go back there. Making the courts more efficient and improving the working conditions of judges and magistrates is an effort towards making our justice system better. What we still lack, though, from the New Day administration is a comprehensive crime-fighting strategy. The PLP promised in its blueprint to bring in enhanced crime-fighting methodologies in their, quote, aggressive war against crime. And thus far, nothing they tried has worked. It is unclear if they even tried anything new or innovative. The international mark, now listen to me carefully, the international mark for homicides countries try to stay at or under is 5 per 100,000 population. For the Bahamas, that would set us aiming 20. 20 or fewer homicides per year. We are far from that. We consistently have more than 100 murders. There were as many as 146 in 2015. There were 128 murders last year, and there were 119 in 2021. And the lowest number we've ever had was in 2020 of 17.9. Yet in 2015, we were off the charts. We were off the charts. We were off the charts. 37. The Commissioner of Police told the media in mid-November that murders were down 16% at that time. He said, don't raise your hand yet, don't raise your hand yet. You know, I always have a punch coming. He said there were then 92 murders. I do not know if that percentage decline still holds, as there have been several killings in recent weeks. While any decline in murders is good, what the 16% decline represent is a fall from extremely high last year to still very high this year. The Bahamas has had a serious problem with violent crime for the past 2 decades plus. And through the leadership of former Minister of National Security, Marvin Dames, and his team during our administration, we had some success with there being back-to-back years of fewer than 100 murders. However, even with that, so much more was needed to significantly drive down the rate of killing in our country. Mr. Deputy, I'd like to say that I have some documents that I will table afterward to support everything I say. Sadly, what we are seeing during this PLP term is quite distressing. Based on the current pace, is it possible that there could be more murders recorded during this 5-year term than any in our history? None of us want this to be the case. We are losing too many Bahamians to violence. And we have still not found a comprehensive intervention strategy to redirect young men from gangs, from crime, and most of all, from violence. I am amazed, Mr. Deputy, at the number of residents in Killarney and New Providence, especially as I traverse my birth area, that is the Baintown area and other inner city, and the amount of people who tell me that they try to rush home before it gets dark, especially now that time has changed. And Mr. Deputy, I have some concern about the function or functionality of the ankle bracelets, the monitoring of the ankle bracelets. And Freetown, listen to me carefully. Some of the members with ankle bracelet have found method to evade the system, wrapping foil or other devices to distort the signals. A common practice by offenders. Monitoring operation must have the updated technology to detect tampering and respond quickly by alerting the police. Mr. Deputy, they have also found methods of cutting the ankle bracelet. And offenders will attempt to cut the devices, and this is also a common practice. When the ICS had such a system, the company that introduced the system, they used what we call a tough cuff on the device. was unique. They had partnered with it, and because of this tough cuff, it was difficult, if not impossible, to cut. And then, Mr. Deputy, I'm concerned about the electronic monitoring. It requires serious and updated with regularity hardware and software that has to keep pace with offenders' behavior and their trends. And I've been advised just recently, last week, and I don't want to go in detail because Freetown would know, that last week, a member who had ankle bracelet was wandering all over the place, but yet his bracelet showed that he was at home relaxing. And when the police checked, Mr. Deputy, I don't want to go into the case, but when the police checked, the bracelet was rest on the bureau in the young man's home, while he all over doing whatever he chose to do. But that's all I would say for now. So we need to analyze and review the functionality of the ankle bracelet. And then the previous ones that were there under ICS also had inbuilt a cell phone system so that individuals could be informed that, listen, get back so-and-so, because Freetown and his crew are coming, the police are coming. Mr. Deputy, speaking of law and order, yesterday's Nassau Guardian reported, it was revealed that in September 2022, the Prime Minister emailed Bankman-Fried stating, and I quote, Sam, not Sambo, not Mr. Sam, but Sam. My son, I quote, my son is being engaged as a consultant for the FT entity that is considering your platform. Grateful if you were to take a call to discuss. My son is copied on this email. Thanks, end quote. Even though the Prime Minister is trying to rush to distance himself from Mr. Bankman-Fried, you know, I said Bankman-Fried. It would have been easier for me to remember Sam. Now I'm going to say Bankman-Fried. I've never met him. It is clear that he was on a first-name basis with the cryptocurrency king, who has now been found guilty of serious fraud. He was comfortable enough to ask for a personal favor from Sam. What other favors did he ask Sam for? Why did he feel comfortable asking Sam for a personal favor? And what was the nature of their relationship? What was the nature of the relationship of our Prime Minister? Meanwhile, what is alarming is it seems the Prime Minister has all but given up on trying to find ways of addressing crime, despite all of his big talk when crime is in the headlines. He is merely a sight-seeing Prime Minister, and I hope he's enjoying Dubai. According to the media, he went on a trip during the by-election campaign. Now that the campaign is over, he is on the road again. He likes to bill himself. Now this is very important. This is very important because what I'm about to say has serious impact on this nation and serious impact especially in the West.
Who's the result of the campaign, man?
He likes to bill himself as the climate change Prime Minister, though he has done little by way of advancing adaptation, resistance, and mitigation measures. Mr. Deputy, in the West, especially in my area, many of the ponds are being filled in to be sold or utilized for housing. We have repeatedly reported this to the relevant authorities, and still the ponds continue to be filled in. This is very evident in the Kiskadee area. This is very evident in Skyline, where at one point there used to be flow stream, turtles, fish, ducks, and other birds. Now, we are depriving the turtles of their habitat, the birds, the fish. How would you like for somebody to come and destroy our home? Mr. Deputy, we have complained repeatedly, but still they continue. And you know what happens? Flooding becomes progressively worse. Progressively worse. And who's causing it? It's flooding as a result of man and lack of improvement or lack of enforcement of laws and regulations. And yet it's time. And yet you're talking about the climate change czar. Then if we look on Tony Darling Highway, behind the Bank of Bahamas, the hills are being cut down. Again, climate change czar. The Bahamas will sink faster than is projected for the world, because we are causing the problems. We are causing the problems. For God's sake, Freetown, I have respect for you. Help me, man. Stop filling in our wetlands. Stop killing our turtles. Stop killing our turtles. Our wetlands must be protected. What the Bahamian people would like to see him as is the education prime minister or the crime-fighting prime minister. I've said before, it is curious to see I'm a lawyer for all the company, how concerned he is about climate change. But with respect to climate change, let's address what we can address. We can address, for God's sake, that's that right? Holy. He wasn't talking much about climate change and carbon emissions when he was making all that money representing oil interests. And meanwhile, the murders, robberies, and other crimes continue, with a few real solutions coming from the New Day administration. Mr. Deputy, before closing, I wish to acknowledge National Women's Week. I know you can give me a minute to talk about the women, darlings of the world. From its inception and throughout its years in government, the FNM has championed equality and women's rights, instituting the most socially progressive agenda in a generation following 1992. I would like to extend a message of support, a message of gratitude to those involved in organizing the week of activities. Golden Gates is doing a job. During this time, let us also acknowledge the many policy and legislative changes still required to advance the equality of Bahamian girls and women. I note on this occasion that both the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Assembly are females. On behalf, that deserves a clap. On behalf of the residents, on behalf of Killarney, and on my own behalf, may I thank you for your services to our country and to the House. That is, thanking the Speaker and the President of the Senate. I know that the House will join me in this regard. And I trust that more women will aspire to elected politics. More women in Parliament and in Cabinet will help to further advancement of women's rights and the protection of women and girls. And again, Mr. Deputy, I thank you, and this being a day to recognize women, I thank the Speaker of the House, who is a female. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member.